Okay, so this is a app called Powers of Minus 10, and I thought I would show you some of the parts. This is something that's kind of cool. They show the parts of the bone in your hand. So we can just zoom in here, and this is more of the kind of, if we can get to it to the side here, we can, oops, it went out again. So right now we're in the bone marrow, and you're looking at where blood cells are being made. So these are kind of stem cells, these little ones with the blue nuclei, and you're going through various stages of mitosis and meiosis. So they're going to actually then become these different kinds of red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. If we go further over, like, let's see if we can go more to the side here and get into the solid bone, you can see it's very different. So you get to see, this is the osteoclast, these little cells right here that are multinucleated. Those are the osteoclasts. And then here, so the multinucleated, and they're spewing that red stuff out. Those are going to be secretions that will break down the bone. And then these more normal, well, there's the matrix, but these little cells in the middle, wish I could write on this, but the cell kind of in the middle here that's just round and has one nucleus, that would be an osteoblast. And so you can see it is secreting not that red stuff, but you can see that little white stuff. That's the matrix being secreted. So they're both secreting something. The red stuff that's going to be breaking down the cells or breaking down the matrix, and then the white stuff is going to become the matrix. So it's your calcium crystals that are going to be deposited to make this solid bone. Some other things you can see in this solid bone, you can see these cells, the osteocytes, that are sort of already embedded in the cell matrix. So this brighter one right here, the lining of the osteon. And this is the central canal where the blood vessel is coming through. So these cells, these are osteocytes that are old osteoblasts that have become buried in the bone matrix, and they're connected by these little canaliculi that are coming out of there. So you can see like the perforating canals here, you can see the spongy bone up here, and then if we go into it a little bit more, you can see the little plates of the spongy bone, the trabeculae. I don't know if I can actually tap on them and it'll tell us what they are. But this extracellular matrix is more of instead of the functional unit of the spongy bone are these little plates in here that make up the spongy bone area, where the stem cells here are making red blood cells. So I don't know if we go to the cartilage. Nope, that's solid bone. But you can see, again, your osteoclasts, which are multinucleated here, secreting the red stuff, and the osteoblasts, if you can see, they're secreting this white stuff. Those are going to be embedded eventually into the wall of the matrix, or in the wall here in the lamellae, like this little osteocyte, which these little osteocytes. And then there's your central canal with the blood vessels. So one of the other parts of this that I like is that you can see the broken bone. So we've got a break in this finger bone, which would be a metacarpal. And if you go into this, at this point, this is called a blood clot. So as the bone breaks, you have all these osteons that are going to have red blood cells in them. Actually, not just red blood cells, but they have the blood vessels running through them. And so when they get broken, and you look at this, it's just, there's no blood vessel. It's all clotted. And so that's the first stage, is the clot. And then if you, let me get back on here, we'll go to the next stage, but keeps pushing that over to the side. Let's see. Then over time, as it heals, it's going to become a soft callus, so you can see the change that has occurred, because now this is made up of mostly cartilage, and that's going to be made by cartilage making cells. And so the mass of cartilage replaces the blood clot, and instead of being bone, it's going to be more cartilaginous tissue. So there's still some osteoblasts, there's still some osteoclasts, but a lot of stem cells in here. There's still some osteoclasts and stuff, but that's inside the broken bone. So soft callus, mostly cartilage. Then you can see it becomes more bone-like, and that's the hard callus. So this is when the bone begins to make the cartilage into solid bone. So this would be called endochondral ossification. So it's taking the cartilage bone and now making it into solid bone. It still looks just like spongy bone in your bone marrow. So if we were to look at this up close, it's still going to look a lot like the little plates. You can see the little plates here. Still looks a lot like spongy bone where it's broken. So that's the hard callus. And if you go to different parts of that bone, you can still see like where it's not that solid bone here, but when you tap on this part, it's spongy bone, or more spongy bone. So when we further heal this hard callus, it goes through remodeling. So in the 6 weeks, eventually that hard callus completes its making of the bone, but it's still like a spongy bone type area all the way throughout, and where it would be compact bone, it's now going to need to be remodeled. So this remodeling, though, takes place over about a year after your break. And so if you break it again, it's going to be very vulnerable in this area where the bone was broken. But that happens over time. You have the remodeling occurring, and great, let's go in further, and that just eventually will become more and more like the original shape of the bone. So the big thing is that remodeling, see, it's kind of coming out at the sides here. Even though it's a hard callus, it's sort of coming out on the sides. It's not straight, because it's just replaced that bone, or that blood clot, with bone. So when you get into the remodeling stage, look at how it changes over, and it becomes more like the original shape of the cell. So you lose the kind of bulges that were at the sides. It becomes more straight, and that just happens like over time.